Yo, what is up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Rugby Swag. We're coming up on the last week of the year. I'm looking forward to having you guys on. So, look, we got a great episode for you. We're going to be talking Rugby Mexico, confirming the MLR Mexico push, talking MLR Schedule Release. American Raptors have finally announced a new rugby director of rugby, and it's a legend. You know, World Rugby, the Olympic Repechage has been announced, and he's talking about the teams that are going down with it. Eddie Jones says, I don't got no regrets, all right? I did it my way. When I say go. Terry Baker talks 57, and Joe got some stuff for us. But first, y'all, let's get to these titles.
I think the minute I stepped on a practice field for rugby, the calling happened.
An 8-year plan to be on the team. And I was in it within 2 years.
Don't wait until you are a pro to be a pro, right?
And I walk around with a rugby ball sometimes and they're like, what is this child on?
It looks like it was a heavy hit.
It's up, it's not up.
You know, that's the first time I played like professional.
I'm making rugby money. How can I make money outside of it?
And there's two Scottish guys, and they said, "Oh, you're here for the movie."
That rugby is a game for all shapes and sizes, all cultural aspects.
He looked at me and he said, "You guys are awesome."
Oh, man, I'm happy that you guys are here. Thank you for making it on to Rugby Swag. Obviously, it's a show where we talk about things going on in rugby around domestically, but also the people that are taking advantage of the opportunity or creating them for them. Y'all, we in that Christmas season. It's the present time. And of course, you know, we're getting that last little bit to be able to remember everything by. And as a result, I just need you guys to continue to remember that if you guys could please like and subscribe over here on Rugby Swag, y'all could absolutely help us on our YouTube page. Make sure that we actually see all the top board and what's not good. Also, y'all can also follow us on Rugby Swag on Instagram. Follow us there at Taufete'e Bailey on X, Facebook, Give Time Rugby, Give Time Rugby, TikTok, Give Time Rugby, Twitch, Give Time Rugby. Y'all, we are going to really get it done. Hey, and of course, y'all, if you guys are unable to be able to catch it on a regular live and not be able to join the conversation, it's okay, because you can absolutely listen to it on any audio streaming site. It's Spotify, it's on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. This is Rugby Swag on all of those platforms. Definitely look out for it. Give a shout out to someone who's already entered. Abel Rossa. Welcome back, my brother. Welcome back. I'm doing well. I'm doing very, very well. Andre Trejo. What's really good with you, pal, man? I hope you're doing well as well, man. So we are going to be meeting, having some fun, talking some amazing stories as this year comes. It's not going out quiet. But before we get started, let's get through some commercials. Take care of those who support us, and I'll be right back with our first story of the day.
Yo, I'm going to let you get right back to it, but I want to talk to you about one of my favorite brands that are out there right now. Actually, I'm going to show you. This is ketogenic coconut bread mix. This is a specialty flour blend that allows me to be able to eat almost whatever cake that I want. Now, coconut is not typically one of my favorite flavors, but this has absolutely killed. And it's not just because it has great taste, not because it's just easy to make, but it's because it is absolutely not going to destroy my stomach. It is gluten-free, but not nasty. This is something that has been going on, and this company, Health Enhanced Food, has so many other options to be able to do and customize to the needs that I wanted to. And this is something that I think we all know, especially in this world. It's hard to eat grain flour nowadays. It's not good. It's destroying the stomach. People are getting new and new diseases, and you need to have some new alternatives. So I suggest definitely go check out Health Enhanced Foods. See what kind of bread you can make. And no, it takes 20 minutes to be able to make something from it. They have a slew of options, and they are well knowledgeable in their ingredients. Everything is transparent. Everything is made in the U.S. and then some. So in the meantime, you guys could support the show and go to Health Enhanced Food, and you can use coupon code RugbySwag to be able to get 10% off your first purchase order. That's RugbySwag. And you guys can go ahead and get your bread journey going on today. That's just your cakes, your pies, your bread, and of course, with Thanksgiving and Christmas coming around, you're going to need it. HealthEnhancedFoods.com. Let's get back to it. Yo, welcome back. Yo, look, man, I don't like to even waste any time. Let's get right up to our first story of the day, and that is, Rugby Mexico has finally affirmed that, yes, there is a push for an MLR franchise in Mexico, and they just announced it yesterday. They dropped a little bit of letter. You got to love a letter. And of course, it was actually in Spanish, but, I got to translate it for the people, because most of us might not know. Actually, the large majority of us might know Spanish, but I don't know Spanish. I'm a Portuguese speaker now, so I can only do what I can do. But from what it seems, it looks like they have something really, really special. Publication related to the agreement between Rugby Ventures Mexico and the State Institution of Physical Culture and Sports of the State of Nuevo León. The Mexican Rugby Federation AC, aka FMRU, makes the following point. Rugby Ventures Mexico is a product that was born from an initiative of Mexico Rugby Federation by provoking yada, 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 yada. Okay, so we'll get to the part that matters most. The FMRU promotes the effort by bringing together 3 partners with experience in marketing, media, private investment, and asset management. And that is an American partner that has led the founding, direction, and operation of Major League Rugby, founded an MLR team, Houston SaberCats, and conceived in partnership with the city of Houston and financed the construction of a Viva Stadium in Houston, Texas. That one might be the most sensible making thing I think I've actually ever heard when it comes to anything dealing with MLR creation, because Houston, if you guys know Houston has a massive Mexican population, massive Latin American Spanish-speaking population. A partnership between Houston and Mexico makes absolute sense. Not only is it direct flights between the two, not only is it tourism between the two, but it is absolutely economic drivers that are actually fitted perfectly well together. The other thing that Rugby Mexico Federation said was that 2 Mexican partners who play together on the Mexican rugby team who continue to be involved in the development of the sport while leading successful professional careers in media, marketing, and investment. A little bit vague, but hey, again, I'm really happy to be able to hear that they are actually putting in the real time to make sure that they got this going on the way that they're supposed to have this going on. That's how you're supposed to get this done, right? You work with who has the money, and we know Houston SaberCats, that's oil money up there. That's that oil money up there. That's a lot of investment going on in Houston, and then obviously Mexico. Now, a lot of people, they had another page on here, but I don't feel like there's a necessity to read it. I'm going to put on to what you got replays of the show on our website, gifttimerugby.com. I'll put the full documentation inside the podcast page for this episode. You guys can read it yourselves and get a full form of it. It's very, very intuitive. But I think ultimately a lot of people would go after, why should Mexico get an MLR? Right? Why do they need to have it? Well, look, for one thing for all, a lot of people don't realize how much Mexico has been developing in rugby, but they're very, very new, ironically. So, a little bit of history going on right here, all right? First and foremost, the FMRU has had 2, Rugby Mexico has had 2 legitimately different series and phases of life. Right? On one hand, they were around in 1930 with Houston and doing their impact on the region, and we're kind of in the late 1970s, and then they just kind of stopped. And then they came back again in around 2003 and have been kind of in the process of coming up and making their way back into the regular fold of things within rugby itself. So I give them credit because, look, USA Rugby has been established since the 1960s.
it's hard. 2003, we're talking a little 20 years, exactly 20 years. So, progress moves where the progress goes. And of course, like, for them, they made the Olympics. Women's side that just literally started in like 2007, 2008. Juan ran sevens. They've been including in the Repechage for the Olympics of 2020. Then again, they're doing it again for 2024. So, this is a team that's been building. I've watched U19 and watched the perform and absolutely, like, really ruffled. Not like they rolled over. They were dominant. This has been a pretty mind you, whenever they've gone up against larger competition and really had to hit it, of course, they've had their weaknesses. They have to step up because, once again, you have the U.S. and Canada and all their qualities have more time, more experience, more population. A lot of Mexico's rugby players almost reside entirely somewhere around Mexico City with the state. So they're still building up the population. But I give them credit because they put pressure on the U.S., pressure on Canada. The U19 has robust program, and shout out to, again, friend of the coach, Alaman, who has been a leader the last 3 years for the, maybe 4 or 5 years, for 3 years, for the Mexican women's side. Like, they're making push, they're consistently being in the conversation in terms of making it being on the scene. Now it's that chance to be able to take that next level. I mean, in addition to that, we're talking about a team that is now also looking at creating a Rugby America team, being included into that within the development. I feel like they're taking a lot of Argentina, to be honest with you, which is great. Like, that's a great regional, competition to borrow a blue. So, shout out to Mexico Rugby Union for permanent. So now it makes me feel a lot more confident. I know whenever the rumors first came out, or when the letter first came out, again, I used this comparison to what happened with Hawaii 3 years back, the national franchise going on now, where, like, is it just a lot of talk, or are you guys actually, like, doing something? Are you guys actually getting something done? So, I think this is something that can have a big upside. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are on this. Of course, hit us up in the comment for the YouTube, PM or message us on Instagram or any other platform. Like, what is it that we are going to see coming out of this Mexico team, and what's that development? Somebody said this a while ago. There might be a little bit of a renaissance in Latin America for rugby. A lot of that has been centered around Argentina, but now we're seeing a rise in Chile with investment into their players and coaching. Uruguay obviously has been steadily developing themselves. Look, and like I said, Latin America and not Hispanic America. Brazil has now made an impact in one of the best behind Argentina rugby countries in South America as well. Spotify has been making that name to be squeezed at. And a lot of people will be like, look at the past, but hey, I say, if you have seen what they've done in the past in a short period of time that they've done this, I don't think there is something that is removed from the situation. Oh, I apologize, guys, for the loud music. I didn't catch that. Anyways, thank you so much, Ill Rugby. I appreciate you, Ill Rugby. And I actually like this. Ill Rugby on Instagram. Look, you guys can actually comment. We're finally able to do Instagram live as well too. So Ill Rugby says, currently have a Q&A with an American-born high school player, female player who's just competed in the Mexico age grade tournament in the works. And it's great for Mexico rugby. A big shot in the arm. However, 2 competitions with one team, fans will be confused. And which side does the ownership put most of their resources into? Honestly, and I'm going to go ahead and answer that right now. Honestly, I don't think that there's going to be that much of a competition in terms of resources. I think the MLR team, while it is being promoted by the
federal Federation de Mexicana de Rugby, even though FMU is promoting MLR, I believe MLR is going to be privately owned. Ultimately, it's going to be privately owned, using state property, obviously, to be able to handle the stadium and et cetera like that. But the team itself is privately owned. So with the Super Rugby America side, I'm thinking that they're going to end up using something of another national team aside. Probably will use their national team. Wouldn't be an unusual aspect to do it. I mean, for Penarol, that's basically Argentina's national side. Uruguay basically plays their national side for it. So Chile is the same way. Like they're playing their national sides either way. And for the MLR team, it's not going to just be all Mexican players that are going to be there. They're definitely going to bring in some Argentinians. They're probably bringing a few Canadians, a couple of the guys that are no longer with Rugby New York or with Toronto, who might not get picked up in recent years, might get picked up for the season following or traded into that area, plus drafting into it. So, like, I have a feeling that we're not going to see a clash of the talent, but there will be probably some questions in terms of, like, who do you consider developmental talent? Who do you consider national talent? But again, I don't foresee it to be a major clash between them. So I appreciate that question. So y'all, I definitely love it. Definitely love to hear more and more about what you got, your thoughts on this. But let's move on to the next story of the day. And of course, that is MLR releases. All right. The schedule came out. And honestly, I'm going to be real with you. It's kind of a point of comfort because, you know, after everything that happened with New York and obviously Toronto, I've said, I think that this MLR might be in trouble. I didn't think it was going to fold. I think they definitely had this year, maybe next year, but, questions are now being had. And on top of that, I think a lot of people had questions about that Los Angeles team. Will they actually be like a real team? Are they going to actually do what they're supposed to do? And then by all intents and purposes, it absolutely looks like they're actually going to make their stuff happen. So with this schedule release, we got the full year schedule. We're talking about 16 weeks, making it work the best that it can. Obviously, they've now made adjustments with the changes. I didn't want to put the entire schedule because it's just, you can go find it on Twitter, on MLR's page, or on Facebook, or on Instagram, but I think X is usually the better one to do it. But I did like looking at what we had for the first like couple weeks, and these are some like legit good matchups. So New Orleans versus Old Glory, which I think is a great rivalry match that people don't. I mean, they probably do, but I think is not talked about enough because New Orleans has dominated the rivalry against Old Glory, but Old Glory got the last big punch before playoff play against New Orleans. Houston SaberCats versus the reigning champions, New England Free Jacks. Houston SaberCats, a team that is constantly like on that cusp. Every year has kind of improved bit by bit by bit. Obviously, the New England Free Jacks are one that is constantly going to be just good competition. It's just good management, good team, good administration. Like, what can you say? They know how to get their players, and they've been doing a lot of good job in signing and keeping players around. The battle of the newbies, the Miami Sharks and the Chicago Hounds. Look, Miami Sharks, aka Argentina's U.S. professional side, and the Hounds now coming back in, who basically last year got all of the LA Giltinis players, and now, we're seeing what they're going to be able to do in year two. Beautiful stadium, beautiful management. They got people who are dedicated to doing it. Miami Sharks got money behind them, great management, and I don't know what they're going to do in terms of like bursting out the scene. I don't feel like it's going to be like LA was 2-3 years ago, but I do think that they're going to make an impact, and I'm hoping to God they're going to do it culturally. We'll talk more about that, come closer to preseason. You got the Seattle Seahawks versus San Diego, another great rivalry in terms of that West Coast matchup. Both of those teams have been very talented, very, very talented teams. They don't play at all. And so it's a good setup. And then, of course, LA versus Utah Warriors. The battle of what I'm thinking, and if that management for LA does it correctly, should be the two most outside the field entertaining teams and community-based teams if it goes right. Utah Warriors have been absolutely killer for their marketing and their community base. I think they're playing themselves into being a blueprint and really setting themselves up. Obviously, Utah has a great rugby culture that's going on out there, so it does make sense as to why they would be able to show out as well as they can. And then, of course, for LA, brand new team. We have no idea what the heck is going to happen. We don't even know who they've signed up for. But for whatever it's worth, I think they're going to actually, they'll make their spark. Everything's just really late. But hey, look, if you got it like that and you think you can make those last late pushes, more power to you. So I'm happy. I'm happy to hear from that one. But like I said, the rest of the schedule I think is going to be good. Looking into comments, Abel Rosa saying, I'm looking forward to the Legion versus Free Jacks rematch. I think that one will be really, really dope. That's going to be a hard-hitting game. Gotta love a good vengeance game. That's where the bread and butter comes into all of this. A good vengeance game with it. So, I think this is one that I actually think this, now with everything that's happened, might end up being one of the best overall seasons for MLR. And not just because of improvement, because actually I think if those two teams had not closed, it might not. But I'm going to go into that a little bit later. But I wanted to talk about Utah's rollout for their announcement, because I'm not going to front. This was one of the dopest rollouts that you could have that I've seen MLR do ever. Like, don't consider MLR to be a massively creative marketing side, but my goodness, did they create a massively entertaining marketing side with this one. So hold on, let me pull this one up for y'all here. Bring this over a little bit. Show you what they let us know is what it is to play with the big dogs when it comes to entertainment. And if you guys can't, you're listening on the podcast, obviously, just go check out the video on YouTube. We play the cuts as well too, so I ain't no worry, you're not gonna miss anything. All right, let's get this over here. Where are you? Oh, shoot. Can't find it. All right, hold on. This is what happens when you get those normal technical difficulties. All right, here we go. This was great. I love this. That's so funny. You're like, you guys don't exist yet. Honestly, look, it's sometimes just that simple. Sometimes it's just that simple. You don't need a whole lot, but that was good. And so for those who didn't know, they kind of used the old school arcade one-on-one video. If you guys seen it, again, you guys can check it on Utah Warriors Twitter page. We'll post it on the gifttimerugby.com website so you can see it. Exactly, Abel. That thing was dope. I saw, and it's one of those things, like, again, it's just do things that attract and bring attention, because what you do on social media is like a top of the funnel. You bring the attention and then you bring people through from there. So like I said, I really appreciated what they did with that one. And I look forward for this to, in general, just continue to build on it, because I do think that because of what happened last year, because of what's happened this year, I think there's such a press for these MLR owners to actually now succeed. And this is now when you get people. You're hungry. You're hungry because everybody's now doubting you. Before it was like, oh, you never know. Of course, people talk. But now you see all the ownerships like reaffirming, we are committed to this. We are going to be in this, yada, yada, yada. Like, I love that. This is what you need to be doing. I need that commitment. That's the hunger that really actually makes a difference over here. And so just one more thing, the MLR actually did change the competition format because of the fact that now you don't have two of the teams anymore. So instead of being like, well, let's try and figure it out. No, they said, let's do this again. It's going again, 16-game regular season, 8 home, 8 away. They're doing overall league standings, no conferences or division. So kind of returning back to what they did the first basically 3-4 years again. So again, nothing out of the usual for those. Last year was the time when they finally did divisions, but I'm actually okay with them doing it like this as of right now. Really get your overall. Those points are going to make all the difference, even though I'm not a big fan of points as a structure because I do like win-loss, but I do like this in terms of what they have going on. Teams play 6 opponents twice, home and away, and 4 opponents once home and away. And then the top 8 teams are going to qualify for the championship series. So I'm actually glad that they didn't reduce the amount of playoff contenders back to the top 6 or the top 5 with, one having a bye week. I'm glad it's back at 8. I do want to see, the top seed. I'm okay with them not having a bye week. Like, we're not at that point yet. Get your numbers up, get the most amount of teams, make people work it in. Just win by having the home field advantage the most, which I think is more than fair enough, right? I think that's more than fair enough for it. What's your guys' thoughts on what this new MLR structure? Well, new is the wrong word. This revised MLR structure, your thoughts about what you're expecting for the season. Obviously, we talked a little bit about it already, but I think that there's something that we can do. Il Rugby over on Instagram was saying, I do hope that we get to go back to conferences at some point. I agree. I think conferences will be good. And I did like the idea of having the 3 conferences when we had 13 teams. But I think we need to make sure we're building up to that. So that, one, obviously makes it easier for travel for the teams. I think that's really significant in terms of restricting and maintaining the costs, but also it allows us to be able to create the separations and, a little bit more power on the head-to-head wins as opposed to, if you got so many tries or so many scores, you hit this number of points. So like the idea of running up the score, which can be entertaining up to a point, doesn't become a demarcation. Like, I do get bored whenever a team has to like literally run up and just mollywop a team for no reason because they need to get those bonus points. It works whenever it's like 2 teams that are very close and then, maybe one does run away. But whenever you have a clear separation between the 2 teams and it's just like, it's not even close. Like, dude, let this go. Let this go. Sometimes it's just, it ain't it. It ain't it. And we don't want to continue. We don't want situations that could possibly water down the product in any way, shape, or form. All right, y'all. So before we get on to the next subject, because American Raptors are doing a little something different. The rise of Argentina in the USA is really becoming a thing. We got an ad right now, but don't go away. Hang tight. We'll be right back here on Rugby Swag with Taufete'e Bailu. Gift time at Bailu. Be right back, y'all.
Hey everybody, this is just the break train sending out a personal little video diary to all you people out there, where I am going to document me riding most of the way between Singapore and Tokyo for the 2019 Rugby World Cup.
I needed help, and it came from Louisiana.
We in Singapore, baby!
Gift from Gift Time Rugby USA is a extroverted tour de force. But what unites us is a hunger for adventure.
Off to KL, Kuala Lumpur.
Gift, where are we?
We're in
Morning, Vietnam! Mount Fuji, baby!
Our love of Asian rugby culture.
1, 2, 3, center!
Rugby is starting to develop here in Cambodia for women as well.
Valkyries, the mighty Valkyries!
We're out here, we're running out of energy, we're running out of money, and we're feeling isolated. And yet at that critical moment, friends, family, sometimes complete strangers come on board. Before you know it, we're back in the game.
Tokyo, here we come!
Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Vietnam. Watch the full adventure at crugby.vhx.tv. That's C like SEE rugby.vhx.tv. Welcome back. Yo, look, man, I gotta say, once again, I talked about the rise of South America within the Americas. I think this is actually a real thing that's starting to happen. A little bit with tongue-in-cheek, but I think it's actually becoming more the blueprint. And we see it with our next story of the day when it comes to Super Rugby America's American Raptors. Now, if you guys don't know American Raptors, most people should know, but if you don't know, the American Raptors, who were formerly the Colorado Raptors, who were formerly the Glendale Raptors, who were formerly an MLR team, part of the inaugural teams that played, decided to actually pull out of the MLR simply because of the fact that they did not want to, be restricted to bringing in a lot of international players. They wanted to bring in a lot of homegrown talent. And so disconnected out of the MLR in 2020 season, and decided to kind of do their own thing and ended up going into Super Rugby Americas, which has been the, South American, I'm not going to say professional competition, more of like the American Rugby Championships alternative, a little representation down there, but they had a chance to be able to play. It's and we'll talk a little bit more Super Rugby Americas, but they had a chance to play, and they are really well known for what they've done on the club side in the U.S. Obviously, their home base is where Rugby Town, USA resides. So, a lot of things happen, but they decided to they need to upgrade. All right, they decided they've been making a lot of adjustments of bringing in a lot of international players, ironically, and subsequently bringing them in to be able to compete in the Super Rugby Americas. And so this week, the American Raptors made an announcement that they have appointed Marcelo Lofreda to serve as director of coaching for the 2024 Super Rugby Americas campaign. Now, as the rest of the announcement go, I'll read it all. Lofreda will be assisted by senior rugby consultant Les Cusworth, forwards and defensive back Ignacio Fernandez Loeb, and backs and skills coach Steve Stagg. Sarah Shabbat, who was the former coach last year for the American Raptors, will return in a scrum specialist role along with strength and conditioning coach Nate Shipley, physiotherapist Leanne Hewitt, Lori Sealer, team analyst Travis Haug, and manager Scott Neen. So, who is, Marcelo Lofreda? All right. And whenever I heard the news, I was like, okay, cool. But it was also like, oh, he's an Argentinian. And that is actually very, very significant because this man is a legend in his own right. All right. So Lofreda actually is the former head coach for the Argentinian national team, played coach for them from 2000 to 2007. He is credited with being the one who, he took Argentina to third place finish in the 2007 Rugby World Cup, the one that, South Africa won. They defeated France, and Argentina defeated France to get to third place. It's a legitimate, actually pickup. It's an ironic pickup, but it's a legitimate pickup. This guy, he played for Leicester. He coached for the Leicester Tigers in Premiership Rugby for exactly 1 year, but I guess they underperformed, and they were like, "Nah, man, we want our we'll take our New Zealanders, English, Welsh, and Australians, but no, not the Argentinians. Y'all are just a little too new to this. And then since then, he's been just like kind of in the background, helping with the coaching here and there. But it's really a significant move for this. And also, he coached a team that Auguste Pichot, the former representative for Argentina for the World Rugby, tried to fight for the spot for chairman in 2020. Big advocate for Tier 2 rugby and the development there. But this is kind of like a legit genius move. It's an old schooler, but if you guys have looked at a lot of the roster that the American Raptors have done, because they didn't do so well last year in the Super Rugby Americas, they brought in a lot of South American talent, a lot of Chileans, a lot of Argentinians. Now, again, I said this before, it's ironic on a lot of their stuff because the reason that they left the MLR was because of the fact that they felt like they didn't want to be handcuffed to have to bring in a lot of international talent and could just simply develop in-house. But according to their results last year, obviously it wasn't good enough. And so they really tried to bring rises over for this Argentinian, for this American Raptors side with it. And then add to this, add one more little component onto it, is the fact that this is a guy who was able to coach Argentina into beating South Africa and New Zealand for the first time ever. So he has a strategy. He's a strategist by trade in and outside of rugby. So, I mean, by all intents and purposes, he should be a good selection. I think the only thing that's kind of weird is just that he doesn't have anything major on his resume since like 2008. So I think he's just been part of the consultation. And obviously Argentina's done their job. They made it to the semifinals in the Rugby World Cup this year. So his voice seems like it has an impact. He's got that, Eddie Jones-ish aura that goes along with him. But it's particularly interesting because again, like I said, for Super Rugby's America, it's really important that this team kind of showed up and showed out. I think for a moment there's a chance that for this next year the USA Hawks side could be playing, but I'm not 100% sure. But this has been a much tougher competition than I think they thought. And with the American Raptors, if you looked at their roster, their concept was they wanted to bring a lot of former football players and bring them on as rugby players and be able to go and do their work at whatever point in time. Like that's what we got the athleticism, so we can teach them the rugby. And again, not a terrible premise. It's not a terrible premise, but you got to kind of mix it in with the veteranship and experience that goes along with rugby. And while they've had all the talent, they have not been a good team. Like they are out of sync. You got all that burst, but no connection. Like it's not bad. It's not been good for a while. You beat the club team here or there, but whenever it's put foot to paint, foot to pedal, like they just ain't doing it. And you got teams like Selcom, Dogos, who are absolute dominant for Argentina. Basically, like I said, is the Argentinian is almost the Argentinian select side. Selknam, which is another like national team B. Pampas out of Buenos Aires, Penarol out of Uruguay, Yacaré out of Paraguay, the Cobras, Brazil, and then of course American Raptors. So you had the pieces that were in place to be able to try and do something, and you didn't. So you need the help. And if you look, they came in second to last. All right, second to last. Dogos losing to Penarol in the last final outings, but it's just like you need them to be able to kick up. Like you need them to be able to kick up. This isn't a team that's doing particularly well, so I find it nice to do it. But I've always said this is the rise of Latin America because now we have the Argentinian side in Miami. You got the Argentinian side happening in now in Colorado. You're seeing Argentinian players now coming around within, obviously that played in Canada, now coming to the States. Like a lot of Argentinians are getting a chance over at this thing. So I think it's really one that is, should be looked at. I feel like we're going to be using Argentinians like the rest of the world uses polys. But, what are your thoughts on what they're doing? Do you find it to be a worthy hiring for this American Raptors side? A team that needs a burst, needs experience, needs some stability on their side. Do you feel like this is just like, you guys are wasting money? I mean, obviously it doesn't impact USA Rugby directly, but it is obviously something that can be a part of that said process, according to a lot of people. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me hear what you got. But in the meantime, let's talk our next topic, the Repechage. The Repechage. And this one I actually find, because I love the Olympics. We got Olympic sevens happening next year, July and August. It's about to go down. Year number 3 in the Olympics. Fiji's got it 2-0. Who's going to be able to break it next? And a lot comes down to what happens in this Repechage. So if you guys don't know, what is the Repechage? All right. The Repechage is the last qualification opportunity for teams to be able to make it into the Olympics, to take the last spot. We got 11 teams on both sides that have been filled, and we're looking for one more team on each one. The game itself, the event itself, is a 3-day event. It's going to be featuring 12 men's and women's team, happening in Stade Louis II, Monaco. Wealthy money. That place is going to be popping with that ching-a-ling-a-ling. I'm so stupid. It's going to be happening June 21st and 23rd. And of course, like I said, one team from each side will be eligible to be able to make it into that last spot for the Olympics. So who is competing this year in the Repechage? A lot of times we've seen a lot of repetition. This year we got Brazil. For the men's side, we have Brazil, Canada, Chile, China, Great Britain, Hong Kong, China, Mexico, Papua New Guinea, South Africa, Spain, Tonga, and Uganda. And for the women's side, we have Argentina, China, Czechia, which I think is the Czech Republic, Hong Kong, China, Kenya, Jamaica, Mexico, Papua New Guinea, Paraguay, Poland, Samoa, and Uganda. Now, for me, the biggest shock on this was the fact that I saw South Africa on the bulletin. Like, I did not expect to see South Africa on here. I actually had thought that they'd gotten one of the automatic 4 spots, but they didn't. Apparently, that went to New Zealand, Argentina, Fiji, and Australia from the 2023 HSBC 7 series, which I did not realize that South Africa had dropped off. I guess they sent so many, were getting their resources sent so much for the Rugby World Cup, they forgot to qualify for that. And then I remember in the Africa's Cup competition for the qualifiers that I was rooting for Nigeria, ended up not making it, but it came down to Kenya versus South Africa, and Kenya ended up winning. Now, at the time, I didn't even think about that because I thought, South Africa kind of half-assed it. Sometimes you get to double up, you do your regional competition while also simultaneously handling your automatic competition. But that wasn't the situation. Like, South Africa legitimately lost 2 opportunities to get their qualified bidding. So in this Repechage, this almost feels unfair because now that the Rugby World Cup is over, South Africa is now going to be in full charge. And I don't know if the rest of the world is going to be ready for them. The other part that actually shocked me is the fact that Great Britain is going to be in contention in this Repechage. There is a possibility of this Olympics happening without Great Britain, who did really well in 2020, the 2020-2021 Rugby World Cup, or not having South Africa, which seems unfathomable to me. Absolutely unfathomable to me to see either one of those 2 traditional powerhouses. But I think that's good for rugby. You got to change it up sometimes, you know? You got to be able to bring out a little bit of the differences over here. Now, on the women's side, they say it's a lot more open, but I'm going to be honest with you, all right? Between Kenya, Jamaica, and Samoa, and then on the side, Mexico and Uganda, like these are the teams that have the highest chance. I'm looking at Kenya most likely broadly taking it all because Kenya lost a surprising upset to South Africa's women's program that has been slowly on the rise. If you guys watch the WXV1, WXV2, I'm sorry, you would see that South Africa has actually performed very well. It's a hard-nosed team. I know it's 15s, but understand the direction and the rise of the program. It's a hard-nosed team. So for them to have beat Kenya women, that was a big shock because Kenya women have dominated the African competition. Uganda is a team that's coming up on the low. They've slowly made their way up into African competition. But I was also talking about Samoa. Samoa and South Africa are so similar. They're just pressing teams. They got great men's alternative programs that have fed into the lessons that they use for themselves, similar to what Fiji has done for the Fiji women. Samoa is a team that's tough. They're hard hitting. They might not be the fastest or most fluid, but if you hit a person hard enough and you can at least contain them, who cares what you're able to do if you can't get past them. Let this be a 14-7 game and get them into the wins. So, look at for them. And then Mexico and Jamaica are actually real underdogs. I know technically, and Hong Kong, China, more or less, I don't know as much because Hong Kong, China is weird. They got a very strong rugby community in Hong Kong. Obviously, everybody knows about Hong Kong Sevens. Hong Kong has a really robust community. A lot of it is expats. I feel like this is China's entry point to get through, bypass the China one, and then also come in through with Hong Kong. But at the same time, like they have the resources to be able to compete. They've not been dominant. Obviously, Japan worked them more so, but China's been some hitters, technical tacklers, not hitters. Like they're not booming anybody, but they've been some technical tacklers for this. So on the women's side, it's all up, but I really do feel like it's going to end up being Kenya. And I think this is going to end up being a South Africa versus Kenya competition. Watch Uganda on this one. Uganda is going to surprise people on the men's side. Watch Uganda men. All right. That is a team on the rise who is doing some dominating things that you don't realize because you're not paying attention to African rugby. All right. You're not paying attention. Obviously, they haven't performed at the sevens level, so who cares? But this is what Ireland was doing way back just 3 years ago. And now look at where Ireland is now. Uganda is doing the same thing. Uganda has been slowly building up. Give them just a little bit more resources. Man, that men's side is going to be wild. And just so you guys know who are already the qualifying teams that are going to be in the Olympics at this point that this repechage is going for. Obviously, automatic for the men's side, like I said previously, New Zealand, Argentina, Fiji, Australia. And then following up, it's Uruguay from the South American side, Ireland, who beat it over clearly Great Britain and everybody else. USA from the North American side, we saw that with Pan Americans and ran. Kenya taken from the African side, like I said, with the upset over South Africa that I underestimated. Samoa from the Oceania side, and Japan taking on the Asia regionals. For the women's, New Zealand, Australia, Ireland, and USA are the automatic bidders. So even with this HSBC 7, this is why I've talked about it in the past. Like, I want the USA women to like come out and dominate a little bit, not because they already have an automatic bidder, like they're trying to earn the Olympics, but they need to set that tone going in hard. Like, I get, figure out your rotations, yada, yada. You don't need to try. And, what do I know? But like, you guys have also finished like 8th and 5th in the world in the Olympics and been dominated by Great Britain, New Zealand, and Australia in the Olympics. So if you're using the same method you used before, it probably is not the best way, even if you got new people on the bat. And obviously, there's Dubai and Cape Town. Obviously, they brought back their veterans. Other qualifying team for the women's side, Brazil, Juan for South America side, Canada for the North American side, regional, Great Britain for Europe, South Africa for the African regionals, like I said, with the upset against Kenya, Fiji on the Oceania side. Fiji just so dominant. If you guys saw 2021, yo, don't forget, man, Fiji's a dominant women's side. Those are some bangers, boy. Those are some bangers. And then Japan for the Asia side. So let me know what your thoughts are. Let me take it out to the comments. Average Rugger says Uganda back in the day at schoolboy level were a forced play. They played them a couple times while I was at the Sharks Academy, and they were tough to beat because of their physical game they played. Exactly. Like I said, Uganda is not one to sleep on. Just because you don't know about them does not mean that they're not something to watch out for, because they are a squad. That is a culture that's there. And not too far behind them, even though they're not in this, Madagascar. Never would have expected it. Talked to a guy over at a food convention. Yo, this man said Madagascar's got such a culture of rugby because of the French. Like, their rugby culture is real. They don't have a whole lot of other sports, but rugby is one of them. They just don't got money. All right. Look for Madagascar in maybe 5 years. But Uganda is definitely is a dark horse. I don't think they're going to win it at all. I just don't think that they have the experience and the talent yet. But they're going to be some bangers. All right. They're going to surprise you with the edge speed. They're very similar to what I feel like is Jamaica in a lot of ways. And that's not just because it's two black nations, but it's literally like they're long, they're fast, and there's some bangers. I think they bang a little bit harder than Jamaica does, but there's some bangers out there. So, let me know what else your thoughts are. You obviously hit it in the comments. Let us know in the DMs, wherever you feel like you got to put it out there. I'm all about being this. All right. I'm all about getting this right. So let's go on, of course, to our next story of the day, which is Eddie Jones don't care. All right, baby. Eddie Jones don't care. He said, I'm not worried about your time. I'm not worried about what you think about me. Yo, they're about to show some stuff out. Average Rugger, no worries. I'm going to get to your question at the end of this, and then we'll talk about it a little bit later, because I'll explain what happened with Zimbabwe. All right. So Eddie Jones has officially, we talked about it last week, officially been announced as the head coach for Japan rugby national team. So, that wasn't a surprise, but his conference, his teleconference for about the process, because if you guys don't remember what the story was, there was the Abel Rojosa Eddie Jones. But if you guys don't remember the story, Eddie Jones obviously was with Australia during the middle of the Rugby World Cup. There was rumors that he was already talking to Japan Rugby Union about an interview and the possibility of taking over the national coach before they even finished up pool play, where they were just completely underwhelming, obviously, in the Rugby World Cup. One of the greatest national disappointments from an expectation level, though, like I've always said, the state of rugby in Australia, Rugby Union in Australia is so dire. It really was an inevitability that they would crash and crumble this hard. But I wanted to go and show what Eddie was talking about whenever he was at his press conference for the announcement of the rugby, his taking over as a coach for Japan.
Well, I didn't do an interview before the World Cup. I was asked by the recruitment agency to share my experiences with them on Japan, and some people might have construed that as an interview. It certainly wasn't an interview. The first interview I had with Japan was in December, and that's the only interview I've had. Apologise to Australian fans. Yeah, mate, I gave everything I could for that short period of time, and it wasn't good enough. As we spoke about before, I had a plan of what we needed to do to change Australian rugby, and we weren't able to do that. Rugby Australia weren't able to help support that. So I decided to move on, and I wish Australia all the best. I feel terrible about the results of Australia, because I wanted to go back and change Australia. So, I feel terrible, mate. Yeah, but I don't feel any guilt at all about this process. And I know you've been banging the drum fairly strongly on it, right? But I haven't had an interview until December.
So obviously, if you guys can pick up on that, that was basically Eddie just being like, "Yo, you know, hey, I was honest with all this. All right, it ain't on me. It on me. You guys are bad at doing reporting out here, putting rumors, and it's not going to be the first time Eddie been in contention against the media. I mean, honestly, it's one of the things that I like about him. Even though I'm a media person itself, I also know how exhausting it is to get questions out, and you got to ask the questions that people want to know but can't ask, and it can be rude or whatever. But I do like I like a biter. It's one of the reasons why I've liked Eddie. That being said, I found it kind of funny where he was like, they didn't interview me. They just were asking about what my experience was with Japan, because why would they be asking about my experience with Japan if they weren't thinking about trying to interview me? Like, it's funny. I love the bounce back. It wasn't me, man. I'm trying to help them. All right. I don't know if they're trying to look for somebody. I'm trying to let them know that even though you're the recruiting company, you need to find out from me about the client that you have that you're finding a new coach for, because the guy who took over for me is stepping down. What can you say to that? What can you say to that? But look, in reality, as much as honestly, that's BS, dude. Like, obviously, it was a pre-interview. Anybody can ask, even though they asked. Like, there's a reason behind it. I'm sure that they did do the official interview in December. But of course, if you guys don't know, he's also like legit best friends with the president of the Japan Rugby Union, Matu Tsushida. Because they coached back in '96 in Japan at Suntory. Tsushida was a head coach. Eddie was assistant coach. We're talking, almost 30 years of friendship going on. Like, and of course we know Eddie went ahead and, backed it up against with 2015 with the win against South Africa. And then of course that helped the culture with the long push in 2019. Like, I get it. Like, it's a natural position, it's a natural return position. Eddie's got the success out there, but what can we say? Average Rugger, even though I'm gonna get to your other stuff, man. I love it. Bald-headed Eddie at it again. Let's go. Let's go. But like with Eddie, again, it's not even like a dime toss. He's very predictable, man. The man's 63 years old. Like, he's not gonna be doing anything that's gonna be dynamically different. He's gonna sit the same rhythms. If you've seen like some of the parody stuff that they talk about with him, he does and sounds exactly what it is. So for him to go back to Japan, so it makes sense. They're gonna get ready for 2027. 2027. Go handle that out. See what we can do for that Rugby World Cup. And see what's the damage. Japan has a robust system. We know it. I do. There's not too much to have to like really build off of that, but I did find it funny, just the response, and I love the way that people are going about it. Like, there have been some real vitriol, like people really, really legit mad about what they have going on. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know what you guys think when it comes down to your day-to-day what your thought of the moment. You can hit us in the comments, join us wherever. Before I get on to the next subject, I wanted to talk about what Average Rugger had said. He asked, what happened to Zimbabwe? They were good at one point, only other African team to beat New Zealand at 15s. What happened to New Zealand? South Africa happened to New Zealand. That's what happened. Siphoning talent goes through. Like, think about a guy like the Beast. Remember the prop who was, I would call him the secondary MVP for the 2019 Rugby World Cup. He's a Zim. Where is he playing? Is he playing for Zimbabwe? No, it's in South Africa. Why? The resources reside in South Africa. The bigger team resides in South Africa. The most opportunity resides in South Africa. So your Zimbabwe players are going out to South Africa. The professional teams are in South Africa. You go where the resources are. And so Zimbabwe kind of faces the same issue that Samoa, Tonga, well, maybe not so much Tonga, but Samoa, Fiji had faced for so long, where you get a talent drain to the more resource-heavy, more resource-consistent country in the world. So in their region, in their region. So makes perfect sense to me. It makes perfect sense. But they are still a team to be able to beat. But this is not going to be the same just because you don't got it like that. It's the rough truth of rugby. All right, y'all. We're going to be right back. And, Perry Baker, get us with some questions, man. That man is hitting the hard-hitting questions and saying, we got to make a decision. Stay tuned. I'll be right back, and we're going to answer that question of what it is that Perry Baker exactly is looking for. Before I let you guys get back to it, I want you guys to go check out rugbyoutletmall.com. This is the place where we are bringing in casual rugby wear. We're trying to set up the designs, make sure that we are giving you something to represent rugby. That's not just a jersey, and that's not just your kit. It is something that you and your friends and your mama and your kids and your parents and your best friend and your wife and your husband and your boyfriend and girlfriend and your they, and just make sure that everybody is able to rock some rugby gear without having to necessarily be stuck to any one type of rugby gear. We want it for your day-to-day, everyday life. I know that's redundant, but that's how beautiful we want it to be. Definitely check out our most recent update, our Rugby Swag Show shirts. They're available now for purchase. You guys can get it. And for any first-time buyers, I'm talking to you. I'm giving you guys 20% off the first purchase. Take as many as you want, 20% off the first purchase. And of course, if you guys will get on the newsletter, you guys are going to see more coupons and discounts that come along with that as well too. But 20% off, and all you guys need to use is coupon code GROWRUGBY. That is GREAUX Rugby. Great quality gear, definitely something for your present, something to be able to give. Obviously, we just got past the year, so that means birthdays are coming out. Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and you have so much more. Hook your family, hook your people up with what's right. Go to rugbyoutletmall.com and enjoy out. And of course, it helps support the show and our media endeavors. Let's get you back. Let's go. Hey, I don't even want to waste any time because, Perry Baker came with the hard-hitting questions. Now, obviously, I got to always set it up. What is it that Perry Baker wants? Perry Baker is saying that the U.S. needs to improve the way that it wants to. If it wants to rise, if it wants to elevate, it's got to make a choice. Y'all know this is Perry Baker, two-time World Rugby Sevens Player of the Year, freaking USA Rugby's all-time leading scorer, third all-time leading scorer in the world. This is the GOAT, the legend, Hall of Famer. The man said, I'm make the name for it. We are not celebrating him enough. As a U.S., he is our Jomo Lomo, all right, in the U.S. That is exactly what it is. Oh, he didn't play 15. Nah, mug. And he's actually here to explain exactly why. He's like, I'm not playing the 15. So what is it that he said? Perry Baker put it on his Twitter. He was like, for rugby to grow in America, clubs and pathways need to model the international levels. 15s or 7s, just one option. Bruh, hey man, like I said, that is the GOAT. All right, that man has been in it. He's been in some of the biggest games. He is a two-time Olympian, about to be a three-time, been in the Rugby World Cup sevens. This man has been in so many HSBC 7 series for the last 10 years. It's on his last hurrah. Like, this guy knows what he's talking about. That being said, I staunchly disagree with this concept. Because of the fact that I don't think rugby is in a position anymore to be selective on what it wants to do. Look, I get it. So with the 7 side, it makes a lot of sense, especially that for a lot of people say USA should really be working on being on the 7s. 7s is where the US is able to thrive most. We're able to see the greatest amount of turnover. Obviously, Los Angeles Sevens is the biggest rugby tournament that happens in the U.S. every single year. Why not just focus on 7s? Obviously, we got Premier Sevens, the Premier Sevens League here with by Owen Scannell. We got 7s in the bag. Like, that's what it's about. Good point. And obviously, the Olympic Committee supports 7s. But I think that's actually the really big issue, is the big issue there. The biggest source of money that comes for the Olympic sevens is because of the Olympic Committee and it being part of the, distribution of money by the Olympic funds to hold the USA national program. Well, what about HSBC sevens and what about Premiership sevens? I don't know enough about Premiership sevens to be able to say. I think obviously they're growing. I do think it's actually a legitimately good program. It's a good league, but I'm very much a strong believer that sevens doesn't work at a long-term level. And let me tell you why. It is a great middle funnel. I'm not even going to say top of the funnel because social media, TV programming, that's top of the funnel. All right. Sevens is a great middle funnel to actual resourcing because obviously, like so many people say, it's a short game, it's a fast game, it's easy to understand, doesn't have that many players, people can conceptualize it a lot. And I've talked to friends who don't know rugby who have been like, I was able to get it. My issue that comes with it is that it is so much a microcosm version of rugby that you don't actually have a chance to be able to create definitive loyalties, right? Like from an individual standpoint, I think we should be making stars. We obviously probably are better at naming 7 stars in the US and obviously 15s. But I think 7 stars are easier to be able to be named. But I do think that because it's so many games and the power that Rugby Sevens has is that it feels like it's an event. It is an event each and every time. It's not a business. Let me correct that. It's not a season. It's an event. So if you're talking about every week, I'm playing the same 12 teams in some way, shape, or form, or every couple weeks, and I watch this for 8 hours a day, every day for 3 days, it can build a crowd because it's an event. Like Hong Kong Sevens is one of the biggest parties in rugby. Why? Because people just sit and do and yada, yada, yada. It's like baseball to an extent, but I really actually liking sevens in terms of how its impact goes to what cricket was before T25. And I feel like cricket was one of those where it's like, this thing can last a week long. We're here about the community. We're here about the stay. This is something that we want to be with our families. But the sport itself was not the most important component. And I think when it comes to 7, it's very difficult for it to be the most important component because you're waiting 2-3 hours for your team to play for 15 minutes of time of speed play. And if you're not really comprehending it, you see the score, but you don't see what the whole denotation. It's a travel sport, 100%. I think it's great for tourism. I think it's great for being able to pick up and put into the different places, like bring people to areas where they might not go. But to do this consistently every week and be able to match it and make sure that you are creating not just a loyalty, but also like you're stealing attention. Like your job is to steal attention. I think sevens has too easy of a drop off when you don't either know what your schedule is or you have to wait for your team. And again, like I said, I think it's like baseball and cricket. Much better product in person than it can sometimes be on TV. Simply because it takes so much time. I understand where he's coming from because yes, every country in some way, shape, or form typically uses sevens for one set of players and then 15s for another set of players. And that's mostly in the men's side. From the women's side, obviously they combined more. And I've been very, very audible about how much I loved that 2017 USA Rugby World Cups team. And honestly, it was USA, Great Britain, England, New Zealand, and Australia. Like not Australia, but the other 3: New Zealand, England, and the USA. Their sevens players were also 15s players. And so we got to see the absolute dynamicism of that sevens players within the more easily contained and more presentable 15 side. Yes, I know 15s is more chaotic. Yes, I know there's more rules for people to go. And yes, I know scrums and rucks can slow down the game. But when you're talking about creating intent and holding viewership, like that regular, like incessive, plays in. I know attention spans are much shorter, but I legitimately do believe, which is why things like American football in the US continues to rise in viewership. Basketball is actually losing viewership. I think it's why hockey kind of stays in the middle. And then soccer kind of finds its way, because you're not like, when you have fewer games and you have less time or more constricted limitations on what you're doing, whether you're watching or whether you're at the game itself, you have to pay attention, because everything matters in the moment. If I know you're going to be playing the same basic rotation of teams 1 week to the next, 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 at some point I go, like, we're just running around in circles to ultimately say we're just getting points to be able to call this a, what do you call it? Call this a end game competition. Like, I want to see certain levels. I want to see, like, I want to see, New Orleans versus the Free Jacks 1 week, and then New Orleans versus Old Glory the next week, and New Orleans versus Houston Sabercats. And each of those are isolated into themselves, right? So then whenever the playoffs comes around, the teams I never got to see, maybe this is where we get to see the competition. All right. And it's not, we have the same exact advantages. We have the same tape. We have the same knowledge, but we're really going head to head. And this one means the most. If I know they played that same rotation of team every single week in some way, and we get relatively the same people in it, maybe one or two people will shift, why do I want to watch a full season? What do I do past that? So that part is why I don't think that sevens alone should be able to do it. But I'm a believer that we should mix the two. I think that we've lost a dynamic amount of star power and usage of the platform because we're not mixing our players together. And I get it, 15s and 7s, they have kind of different, what do you call it? They have different ways of training, but I think that's also part of the power. Like, I want my 7s players to be coming in, like, they understand spacing. They understand how to be able to get the biggest amount of burst because that's what they're used to doing. They can get to a breakdown, and they might have to learn how to do a breakdown, but in 15s, the breakdown that they have to learn can be used also for 7s for trying to close up gaps whenever you have a big old boys like Fiji or New Zealand to be able to go deal with. And whereas on the other side, the forwards now get to up their game so they have to play faster to keep up with the wings that are going on with 7s that have probably more stamina because they've had to play more sprints within a shorter period of time. But the breakdowns are become much more easier if you bring one or two maybe into 7s so that you can do it. And even if you don't bring your forwards into 7s, like your centers and all those guys, they now become a lot more dynamic in terms of how they utilize their spacing. So I don't think it's one or the other. I actually think the rest of the world has been failing on that significantly. I know the schedules don't allow it, and there's a play of overworking the body, but I think the one thing the women's have done have been able to take advantage of that. You take advantage of that. You have your 7th players play 15s playing the Rugby World Cup, and you get to see them do that, and then you get to go see them in the 7s round. Those forwards, you get to see them put up with the fast players, and then every once in a while you might see one of them cross over. Like, what would happen if you put Ileana Mar at center going into it, or put her at lock going into 15s? I feel like we have a completely different outcome with our women's team. What happens if you get someone like Ben Pinkelman? What he does, he plays on both sides. What happens if you had Perry Baker and Carlin Isles on either side? We did have Carlin for 15s once, and I know Carlin doesn't really play anymore. But what if Perry had been playing 15s as well? Like, how much more could we have seen him like really break out and do? I know he's thin, but he's a strong dude. He's not like, he's lanky, not skinny, not breakable. So I do think it's more of a lost art. Like, I'm glad that you got guys like in France, like Dupont, who's saying, no, I'm not going to play 15s this year. I'm not going to play international 15s. I'm going to go ahead and get ready for the 7 side. And I'm nervous. That's different. We should be doing that. I love it that you had guys like a Sonny Bill Williams who just jumped around all of rugby. While he wasn't great at any one of them, he was dynamic, but it was like, I want to be able to see that. I don't think his folly is the example of what is not going to work. Like it really is just synchronization. And I do feel like, it's something that's lost. So let me know what you guys think. Average Rugger, that thought it showed. Average Rugger said, I mean, sevens is a picking ground for 15s. For example, look at the last 15s World Cup. How many backs from the sevens programs? Colby, Quagga Smith, and a lot more. I agree. Exactly. Like, that's where you wanted to be able to see, like, you see one element for another. And it brings two different training programs, but they also complement themselves. It's almost this wild idea, which I think is really, really terrible at sometimes, is that when it comes to rugby, we have such a heavy belief that you have to be just rugby, when it is shown ad nauseum that a kid or a player that comes from multiple sports and is able to use the dynamicness of all these different sports are going to be able to perform better, or at least adjust better in a lot of ways, because of the fact that they can use different skill sets from different sports to be able to improve maybe one that they're focusing on. That's why we love people like Deion Sanders, baseball player, track star, football player, or Bo Jackson, baseball player, archer, football genius. I can go on. Of course, from the football scene, that's my lane. But like, you see that so often. Alev Kelter, a hockey player turned rugby player. Like, those multi-sports athletes have a lot more experiences to pull on, and they don't fall into the same old habits, and hence they can give them different weapons. So once again, let me know what your guys' thoughts are on this. It's not something that I am terribly like a big fan of this precision of choose one or the other. But again, I don't discredit. This is Perry's opinion. And I'd love to talk to him more about it, but he knows. He's been in the program. He's played against the best, not some of the best. He's played against the best. So he knows a lot more than maybe I have on hand. But from a spectator standpoint, I just think it's something that's a lost art. And for average, no, Perry Baker doesn't play 15s because he focuses on sevens. Carlin Isles, for a split second, played 15s with Glasgow and then a little bit for USA Rugby, but ultimately ended up at sevens before, I guess, for the time being, has stepped away from rugby. I'm not sure if it's indefinitely or not. He's never made an official retirement thing, but it's been like 5 years since we've seen him on the pitch. So, take it for whatever that is. All right. Next up, we got a great little conversation that Joey Taufete'e, who's a USA Rugby player, was able to make a statement about what was going on for USA Rugby, the hosting for the 2031 Rugby World Cup. And I liked it. It wasn't anything super major, it wasn't anything super major, but he did kind of project the question of like, are we ready for it? So in his article, let's first and foremost, let's call it for what it is. Like, first and foremost, who's Joe Taufete'e? Now, if you guys don't know Joe is a beast USA Rugby player. Beast USA Rugby player. He has been an Olympian. He has been a World Cup player. He's played for the Worcester Warriors before they fell apart. He recently was playing for the Leicester Tigers. Now has been playing for the Houston Sabercats. And, of course, used to play for the LA Giltinis. The man's got championships. He's played in the biggest games. So he knows what he's doing. He's a hooker. He's a prop. He's been a dynamic force, to say the least. I think this can be said quite easily. So he wrote an article on the website Cozy Performance.com. The article named Rugby's Crossroads, Paving the Pathway to Major League Sustainability. And his premise for his entire thing was that the USA MLR program is absolutely pivotal to the credibility and placement for the USA Rugby World Cup 31 bid. Hold on, y'all. For him, I think, a lot of the precipice was on, after the Toronto Arrows and the New York Ironworkers finally, obviously they're folds right now, and the loss of Bill Webb has made some big impact onto that. But one of the quotes that he said on there that I really liked was where he kind of compounded on the factor of amidst the challenges, there lies opportunity for transformation. All right. One plausible solution emerges in the form of a collaborative ownership. Sharing the ownership mantle among a consortium of investors could cushion financial risk and distribute burdens, offering a shield against economic downturns impacting individual teams. One example he used was a collaboration with Legends, a premium experience company that could fuel commercial revenue, sharing up the league's financial foothold in the quest for sustainability, global partnership, robust digital marketing strategies, business intelligence stands as crucial pillars for the revenue growth and fan engagement. Now, I definitely agree with him, but I already feel like the MLR has already been doing that, which, I think he's now looking at how do you guys scale that more? What have you been working on? And you've seen it. MLR is working with I forgot the name of the ball partner that now putting the tracker system inside the balls. They've worked with a few digital marketing companies along the way that have been recommended by agencies like WME and stuff like that. They've worked with them. I think a lot of it has still been, bits and pieces. Obviously, I talked about the things that I believed would help the MLR and rugby as a whole, but really particularly the MLR. And we've kind of seen a lot of this lately. The other thing that he said, that Joe said, was the stakes transcend the league's boundaries of what the impact of MLR is. MLR's success is not just about its own sustainability, but crucial influences the future of rugby in the U.S. With the 2031 men's and 2033 women's Rugby World Cup slated in the country, MLR's sustainability becomes pivotal. It shapes the performance of the U.S. national team and fosters local interest, both vital elements for the success of these global tournaments. So I don't disagree with him on this factor. I don't think, obviously, it's the sole elements that need to be held for maintaining the Rugby World Cup 2031 and 33, or for the community engagement. There's elements that go around that are not just simply based off of what's on the field. It does create that credibility moment inside to at least say, hey, we got this professional team. We have a discipline. We have a means of creating developmental areas that are not just limited to the universities or to the amateur clubs. We got guys that are daily use rugby players. But it's also, again, not groundbreaking, but I think this is a good step forward into a media space and presenting something from his own presentation. Again, he is a professional rugby player. I played at the highest level of professional rugby as well as the developing level like MLR. So he is not a stranger by any means to what the world of rugby and the business of it is from a player standpoint. But as I said, I think it's a very simplified way of saying it. But he's not wrong. Just like I said, it's not the full story, but it's definitely part of it. We got Average Rugger asks, what do you think about some MLR fans who are complaining that the MLR is full of overseas players and not growing the local game? I disagree with this. Better talent makes better local rugby. So I appreciate the question on that one. Honestly, I think there's a mixed bag on this one. I remember whenever the initial idea for the MLR after the professional rugby league went down, and even with that, was the idea of being able to develop your local talent. I think that is one thing that is absolutely needed to be had, because local talent does attribute to your community. At the same time, I do think that there is a requirement and a need to bring in veterans from other countries, even if they've been playoffs, because of the fact that, it's the rising tide lifts all boat kind of concept. So if you are not increasing the competition that you're playing against, it's very difficult to develop the guys, because you're only going to be playing amongst yourselves. And honestly, what would have been the difference between them doing that as amateur club players versus them doing it as professional players? It would have just been they got paid probably worse than they would have on a home basis, committed more time to be basically doing the same thing. So I do think that there's been a value to bringing in overseas players. that being said, there has been a really needs to be an overarching need, not so much about trying to necessarily just have your homegrown players, but being able to really overdevelop the grassroots side. So, for example, right now, I'll use the NFL as an example. The NFL has a huge problem where they have a constriction in participation at the high school level. For the first time, they are under 1 million total players playing football in the USA. That's including Pop Warner to middle school, high school, college, professional, most of it being residing within the high school levels. That impacts what you do for obviously future players that'll be coming in and being able to scale your talent. But also it speaks volumes to what your viewer base is going to end up being. So, people will attach more to their homegrown bodies than they ever will to any foreign body. We can see that in the NBA. Everybody can say like Giannis Antetokounmpo, Luke Adonik, or homeboy from the Nuggets, and all these guys who are actually doing Joel Embiid, doing well. They're foreign players, but nobody connects in the same way with this American audience you have a LeBron, a Steph, in the past, and Allen, obviously Michael Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, yada, yada. Homegrown is always going to attach the audience. If we had more audience coming from outside the U.S. and then participating, then I actually think that greater amount of international players definitely helps with the growth of the league outside the field as well. But as of right now, I've always felt like the MLR has done a poor job in marketing their international players. If you're going to pay this much and bring them in and do all this visa, you may as well capitalize on every bit of them and put them in every centerpiece of your marketing that you possibly can. And I don't think you've made their stars from that. So from a local level, it's something that you can do. And I think obviously when it comes to scaling, it's cheaper. It's equivalent of, are you going to license players? It's like Netflix. Is it cheaper to license movies, or is it easier to create your own? At the beginning, it's always going to be harder because you need the runway, and so licensing makes the most sense. But over time, it needs to be able to build up. And Rutgers, if we get more MLR academies, that would help the grassroots level. I don't even think necessarily we need more academies. I think it's just need more help in developing a streamlined situation that can be based around the academies, and they can be a centerpiece. But I don't think we need like 20 academies. I think the 11 academies, one per MLR team, is fine. And then regionalized, they should play as the centerpiece or administration for a statewide or region-wide version of grassroots play in youth rugby. I know they're doing this a little bit in Baton Rouge. Shout out to Teresa, who works with Nola Gold, and their players who are second team and some first, coach the younger players, and then those younger players get the obviously experience of that veteran play, that professional play, and then you keep your loyalties growing up and obviously build a base that over the course of like 15, 20 years actually becomes very, very significant to the overall objective for the MLR itself. So, so let me know. Please let me know what you guys think. We're going to be right back. I got some final thoughts for you. Got to talk about some of the reactions, the comments. I love the conversations that we have consistently. Thank you guys so much. Just stay tuned. We got one more segment left, and then, that's it for this year. So I'll be right back. Just hang tight. Y'all, if you are trying to be able to get your name out, whether it's for business, whether it's for work, whether you're just trying to do something personal for a friend or family, you need to stop utilizing social media as the sole place where you put all your stuff. You don't know when the algorithms are going to change on you, and you don't know whenever the rules are going to change. So what seemed like it was okay yesterday might not be today. And what does that mean? You need to have your own home, and that means having your own website. That's where Green Geeks comes into play. Now, Green Geeks is the place where you can create and build your website in the cleanest host in the game. I'm talking about environmentally. Not only that, they'll provide you with a free domain name and free template builder so that you don't even have to think about having to create your website. I've used Green Geeks for almost a decade now, and I have been so satisfied by everything that they've been able to provide for me. No matter whether or not I know what I'm doing or I don't, they have 24/7 support for me every single time I need a question answered, or I need something to be changed, or I need to be updated on any information. And the best part about this is that I'm not limited to any of the websites that need to be used. It uses a WordPress foundation, which allows me to have access to limitless amounts of templates that are available to be able to use for any version of a website that I want to have. And the best thing about it, it costs me less than $5 per month to do. And that can be the same for you. All I needed to do is click the link in the bio. If you're listening, definitely click it in the description. And if you're watching, definitely click it in the description as well. But you guys, this is something that everybody should do. You don't have to just do e-commerce. Your website is the place where you have control over what you want. That's your house, not their house. And go ahead and get that with Green Geeks. Once again, click the link in the description to be able to get your first year at under $5 per month. Guys, it's the best decision. I'm telling you. Let's get back to it. Oh, welcome back. All right. So, one segment that I'm trying to move into 2024, because there's a lot of things that, we got coming up for 2024, is the reactions in the comments, man. Some of the best conversations I've ever had in rugby has happened whenever it's in the comments for the YouTube channel. If you hit me in the DMs, and obviously with TikTok and all the thing, you can hit me literally everywhere. You can get me almost anywhere. So, I really enjoy these conversations. I wanted to bring some of them up publicly because they're just that legit. They're just that legit. So let's get it all started. So first one comes from my guy, Neil392. He talked about, what about Joe Yap's appointment as Wallaroos coach? Interestingly, she appeared on today's The Good, the Skays, and the Rugby film just before the announcement. So this was in response to the video a clip I put about Eddie Jones being named head coach for Japan. So, Neil, like when it comes to Joe Yap, honestly, at the time, I didn't really know that much about her. In this moment, I'm just kind of like, that's legit. Like, I don't have any feelings about it anyway. I think that's awesome that she went from War Sister Warriors and that she's now been able to go and take over the Wallaroos. I know that 15 side has been pretty good. They were actually pretty good in the WXV1, and they've been kind of on the rise. I think they've been, again, playing a lot between their 15th and 7th players, trying to figure out who's where and bringing them to each side. But I think she's going to bring a lot of consistency, especially for the 2025 Rugby World Cup, which is where they're going to really need a show out. I think those women are basically the last dying hope for the rugby union for Australia at this point. So, I do believe that it's a great hire. I think she's going to bring a lot of dynamicism. I don't know why I can't say this word, but it's a good hire. It's a legitimately good hire. So shout out to them on that one. Next up, Jason, my God, Jason Bray Ultra Sports says, don't go away mad, Eddie. Just go away. Responding again to Eddie Jones being named head coach for Japan. My boy Jason, he part of the Singapore to Tokyo ride, definitely has shown his spite might be an understatement for Eddie Jones. He's an Australian, you keep it. He's a rugby league fan that goes with it. The Women's Rugby World, in response to the Women's Rugby World Cup 2025 venue announcements, G Cromer 903 is like, excellent, can't wait. I'm the same. I'm looking forward to what 2025 has to offer. In response to the NRL promos on the NFL, Jason Bray Ultra Sports goes, Campbell Graham and Aaron Woods, what the hell? Go Broncos. Again, responding to the two guys that were doing the promotion for the NRL's March 2nd Las Vegas showcase. Again, should be interesting. I've heard a lot of like pushback, especially with Aaron Woods. Like, I guess he has some controversy behind him, but you do what you do and you use what you got, man. Big shout out to Jack Palm Beach, Florida. Jack _Palm Beach, Florida. He kind of responded to the episode Rugby New York has fallen in Dubai 7's review. So he was saying, because I obviously had made a lot of criticisms about MLR, the trouble that they're in, and obviously what they are, what they can do to be able to help themselves. So Jack _ Palm Beach, Florida goes, we can keep trying. If professional rugby peters out in the U.S., who cares? The loss, there will always be college and university rugby, which I really enjoy. And then he followed it up with, I agree. Rugby needs more time at the college and university levels before going pro in order to build a fan base. Good comparison to McDonald's, because I utilize the idea of McDonald's and needing to use real estate. I will say this. I do think that there is an absolute need to be able to have a professional. And I think that if the professional rugby league does peter out, from the hardcore fan base side, of course, I think 100% will stay in. Amateur clubs will still be able to play. People will enjoy. But I do think that it impacts the generational mobility, and I do think it's almost feels like an incomplete journey to some extent. There's satisfaction, there's ambition, and I think you need to find somewhere in the balance between the two of those. If you're not finding that, it makes it really difficult for bringing in new players, especially when it comes to like hitting. Like, it's not the same generation as it was before. A lot of people now have more awareness about things like, especially in the US, lack of health insurance, worries about medical problems that can exist, that can happen later on. So the stakes and the value have to play into what the turnover is. And, if you get too old of a sport, it can kind of lose its glisten. While it's great for stories, great for amateurs, lasted a long time, you do have to change with the times. And then he said also, for all their love of sport, 99.99% of Americans experience with American football in this touch, flag, or throwing a football at a park or the beach. Most is watching it and getting drunk. Followed up by, for now and the foreseeable future, Americans won't embrace professional rugby, as the world will never embrace American football at any level. It's a one-country sport. I'm an American who prefers rugby. So I think there's validity. I think on one hand, I think the number is probably closer to like 90, 80%, 90, 85, maybe 70%, something like that, who will never play American football. No. It's maybe close to like 95% that may never play American football overall. And you're right. Most people are watching it or experiencing it. So that's where he's responding again in terms of being able to build the viewership. You need those casual viewers. And it kind of goes back to the original point that you were saying, that I was saying about not having the professional league. Casual viewers are very difficult to bring along if you're not doing anything to add stakes to it. From the college side, it's nice, but the college side gets bolstered because you get to see those kids develop into the professional side and then see them as grown-ups. It's like you're raising along. Those are your inspirations, your contemporaries, or your stories that you're going against. So you want to be able to have that raise, and that's where that casual viewership also comes in building the loyalty, even if they're not a participating side. As far as American football being a one-country sport, man, honestly, dude, look at the NFL. The NFL is starting to make its rise. I will say Germany is a much bigger football playing sport than people really realize. We knew them from NFL Europe, but we've seen the NFL do their games, I think, in Hamburg last year. They're going to be doing it in Berlin next year. Like that, they had crowds. They've done it in Twickenham Stadium in London multiple times and have gotten their 60, 70, 50,000 full stadium crowds for those games. And those are some of our worst competitions, worst teams that they're playing. They're improving. Obviously now next year, the NFL is going into Brazil. They've done it in Mexico. They'll be going to Spain. And the reason I'm saying this is that even though it seems like as of now, NFL has been able to eat off of the American public because, one, the U.S. has the largest economy. Two, most of the biggest money players in television reside out of the U.S. And so those TV contracts have been absolutely pivotal to the NFL success, and obviously college rugby has its impetus. But the real game that the NFL has played that has taken the world, no matter how many people complain about how long it is, how many commercials it is, it's overrated, it's underrated, we like it, we don't, yada, yada, is that there is a perception to the name NFL. It is the richest sport in the league. Soccer, Premiership Rugby, La Liga, all that might be the most watched, but having the title of the most glisten plays something. And for us as rugby people, we want to be able to work into that range of being able to be like, yo, what do we need to do to increase our glisten? We need to be able, we have the international range like soccer does, but we don't have the monetary backing like soccer does. So we need to do things that allow us to be able to bring players through and increase the value proposition for others. And it's not just money, but those two things create risk rewards where amateurism just cannot simply sustain that over a period of time. But even though most people will be amateurs and never will get to the professional level, but there always needs to be that glisten of hope, that maybe possibility. We know some of the best stories come from the people who say, man, if I hadn't blown out my knee in high school or in college, I could have been going into the league or yada, yada, even if they didn't have a dead man's chance of getting into the league. Like they were never going to, but all these things add to the story and the lore that goes along with it. And in the end, sports and entertainment is a lore game. It's a lore and story game, and that's where we want to build. We want to build our heroes. Where's our next Achilles? Where is our Mansa Musa? Where is our Schwarzenegger? Whatever, I don't know. Rit the Rugger 160, man. One of my guys been a constant. Thank you so much. Rit the Rugger goes, as an American, I feel no need to watch games live. It's easy to avoid knowing who won a match before viewing it. To me, even if it was played yesterday or last week, that blessed ignorance is bliss. Hell, when I was a Denver Broncos season ticket holder, the Elway years, when they were on the road, I would play golf. Courses were pretty empty, ride home with no radio, watch the recorded game with the luxury of fast forwarding through the commercials. Heaven. I do agree, though, that watching live is nice if you don't have to get up hours before the sun comes up. It's in response to the Women's Rugby World Cup 2025 venue announcements. Of course, where I said that I do feel like this 2025 Rugby World Cup will actually be the best, most popular and most watched Women's Rugby World Cup in comparison to the 2017 Rugby World Cup, as opposed to the 2022 New Zealand, 2021 New Zealand Rugby World Cup, which I don't think should have been as lauded as it really was. I do agree that you don't need to watch the games, but I also feel like that's also the problem that has to be solved. If there's no the reason why it makes no sense to not watch the games is because there's no story behind it. Like, if you don't have a story, there's no reason for you to look for the climax. So I do think that actually plays a factor, and you speak to a very big problem that comes in to why we have difficulty in building up casual fan bases. Because what are the stakes? Outside of winning a trophy that, whether or not you have a chance to do it or not, like, if you don't feel like you have a chance, why are you going to go watch it? You might do it for the love of the game, but the love of the game makes you a passing player. How do you get them into being storied, into a hard nose and being like, I need to go see must-see TV? And Ray, you remember this, like me, back in the 90s and obviously the 2000s, where we had appointment television at its best, and people would go do it. And even if you're like trying to ignore it, where in that time, the 90s, the Elway years, in the 80s, obviously you had specific sources that you had to go around. So radio and television and word of mouth. This is it. But now we have so many more. Twitter, X will get it. It'll hit on Facebook. Freaking knockout over here. So the only reason to know the results and know it well is because the story makes sense. So I think you speak literally to the problem that there is no great stories that are making you say, I need to go watch this, outside of, I just like rugby and I like to support my people, which is still good, but it's not the same. It's not the same. USA Rugby League Union fan goes, Followed NRL for 8 years, got into both rugby codes at the same time, love both. I'll be in Vegas for this. It's an amazing competition, so fast. Ball and play time is insane. This is in response to the NRL promos on the NFL clips that I put out. And I think we got one more. All right. Last two, we got Neil392. The SAFA's move from Super Rugby is driven by two things: money and geography. There is simply for more money in Europe. The TV contracts are bigger because there's a bigger audience. Secondly, the north-south commuting is cheaper and easier than east-west. This is in response to the reactions to story comments that I put up. And I agree, but as it was said to what you were talking about, when it comes to the crowds, yes, there is more of an audience in terms of total range in Europe, simply because everybody's a little bit more constricted. But I would argue that those TV contracts actually also needed South Africa because of the fact that there is more dynamic rugby, and you probably have also what you even spoke about going into the pubs that will watch the game. Because the name of the game for these contracts are what is the range, and then subsequently how much can we sell this spacing in the games for ads, right? And that's where they make their revenue. They're not outside of cable, but most of this is free to air. So they're making their money from licensing, or they're making their money from ads. So in terms of licensing, South Africa does have something to provide, but it also means the factor that you need to cultivate that consistency, loyalty, and you need to have a presentation that makes people want to be able to sit in front of their TV, computers, telephones, etc., and be able to want to do it. And then, of course, like you said, the north-south commute is significantly different. It's an 8-hour trip, but it's definitely time zone far more relevant and definitely way cheaper. And if you guys know plane routes, planes do not like going over ocean. They want as little ocean as feasibly possible. And going South Africa to New Zealand, South Africa to Australia is definitely not the commute that is price friendly at all. But yeah, I do think it absolutely is both. But you do that money plays for the growth. And the last one that we have is with Hottie Toddy Channel, who asked, who was the first Latin American team? This was the MLR going to Mexico video. Whenever I talked about the announcement for Major League Rugby going to Mexico as a rumor. And I said it'll be basically like the second Latin American team. First one is Miami Sharks. Miami Sharks is Argentinian run, Argentinian GM, Argentinian coach, majority prominently Argentinian players, Argentinian owner, like in a Latin American city, like in the US, like one of the most Latin American cities in the US. So that's where I was. Tongue in cheek, of course, but I mean, to some extent, it's not a lie. It's not a lie. So y'all, that is all I got for you guys for today. Yo, I want to thank you guys so much. Thank you for this year. Thank you for rocking with me. I'm not gonna lie, this was a tough year for me, but there's been a lot of blessings. It started with the HBC Rugby Classic up in DC, and we just kind of managed to go our way. It's been tough. There's still a lot to rectify for 2024, but I'm really happy to be able to be coming back. I thank you who's been adding on, who's been listening, who now started watching the pod, because whether the Squid Rugby stuff or whether you've been doing it since way early 2020, 2021, 2022, my inconsistency. But this year, I am really happy that you guys were able to get in on this so much more. Actually, let me just throw two more on here. Average Rugger, no more watching games at 9 a.m., but 5 to 6 in the evening, which is definitely a big plus. And Abel Rosas, yo, thanks, Kings. Have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Yo, same to you. Same to all of y'all. I hope that you guys are able to spend this with family, and I hope that you guys, if not with family, at least have a time to be able to just feel peace throughout this time of the year. It's really important. I look forward to a strong 2024. I think there's going to be some significant upsides that are going to go along with this for a lot of rugby. I think we're going to go through a bunch of pits, but I think we are backed out of the worst version of the pits that could be there for us. So It goes to that lot. But thank you all for your time. I look forward to seeing you guys next year. I will be back January. I think I said January 10th is whenever we'll be back. Yes, January 10th. So we'll be taking 2 weeks off and then back at it. Hit that rugby news top of the year. Let's go make some magic happen. So for the last time in 2023, I hope that you guys are happy. Hold on, I gotta get it right. I'm sorry. I hope that you guys are happy. I hope that you guys are that you are highly favored. By simply being here, you are highly favored. Every day is a new opportunity. Every day is a new chance. And you are amazing people. Not just because you watch me, but because you are you. Have a great Christmas, a great New Year's, and have an awesome start to 2024. I'll see you guys January 10th. Until next time, cheers, y'all.